Thanks for tuning in to Kalkine TV. I'm James Preston and this is Game On, your one-stop shop for all things sport. Touch football has been growing at a rapid rate in the country for the past few years, and it's now set to go into overdrive with a new deal between Touch Football and sports broadcaster Kayo Sports that will see over 100 hours of touch footy streamed exclusively, live and free on the platform annually. To get the inside word on the deal and to look at NRL Touch Football more broadly, I caught up with the CEO, Jamie O'Connor. Jamie O'Connor, thanks for joining Game On.
Our pleasure, James. Yeah, thanks for having us on, mate. Appreciate it.
Now, Jamie, Touch Football has been going from strength to strength over the past few years, and within the past week, there's been an incredibly exciting announcement that will help push the sport to new heights. Tell us a bit about the deal that NRL Touch Football has signed off with Kayo Sports.
Really, it's a real marquee one for us, I think, James. It just continues to sort of show our progression over the last, certainly over the last 3 years. Commercially, we've become a lot more savvy, and a real focus around the commercial component. A major part of what we need to do is to continue to build the profile of our sport, and not just us, but most sports talk about, you can't be what you can't see, and we talk about that a lot internally, and we're trying to really put a spotlight on our sport and show the average person that sits at home and wants to consume sport as a spectator sport of what touch football, particularly at the elite end, looks like. It's particularly early on, we sort of had some feedback around our sport that I don't want to be watching that, but what we need to shift people's mindset is it's not what what we're broadcasting is not what you go and play on the weekend or what you play through the week on a Monday or Tuesday night or whatever it might be in your local community. The elite end of the sport is something that's really fast, it's really athletic, highly skilled. The shift to Kayo is trying to introduce a new audience to our sport, which we think will be critical in growing our participation base, which at the end of the day is our main focus. We try and drive as many people to come and enjoy our sport as we possibly can, and this is just one of the methods that we'll employ to do that.
We have mentioned there that the last few years you've had this ongoing partnership to give a bit more visibility to the game, and obviously part of that would be looking to increase and extend the product. Are there value-adding elements that you're looking at moving forward with this Kayo deal?
Look, there is, and we'll keep sort of building out on the agreement. Kayo have been fantastic for us so far in all of the discussions. We keep throwing different types of concepts up as far as content that we can produce. I think in a broader NRL strategy, and obviously we've got a really close alignment and great partnership with NRL. What this partnership does is that we're a predominantly summer sport, and most of our events sit in that summer space between October and March and April, where I guess our transtasman international window sits. But there's a really broad sort of 12-month year-round offering. If you're your NRL or rugby league aligned and you want to watch that type of content, we sort of build out a calendar right across the period of 12 months. And no matter what sort of pieces of content we've thrown up as conceptually as areas that we'd like to continue to explore, Kayo have been terrific. So I think it's a case of you'll see National Youth Championships, pandemic pending, but we're really confident that we'll be able to get a National Youth Champs underway later this month, early October. And that'll be the first sort of dip our toe in the water of our partnership with Kayo, and we'll continue to build on that. But certainly as far as value add around content goes, we're looking forward to what we can do together over the course of our partnership.
Now, we've been talking a bit there about the growth of the sport itself. Obviously, what's been going on over the past 18 months would have hampered that somewhat, just because it's interrupted so many different industries, so many different sporting competitions. How has touch football been navigating the pandemic over the past 18 months?
Look, it's been challenging. I think, right from the get-go, we set a fairly strong tone around leadership, both, at TFA, New South Wales Touch Football, and Queensland Touch Football at a leadership and board level. We're really strong on the fact that we're going to be proactively reactive. And what we sort of talk about that is that we didn't want to jump the gun and try and preempt what government might do. We didn't want to jump the gun and try and preempt what the virus might do, and how long we're going to be closed down for, and whether or not we'd be back up next month, or whether we'd be down for a year. So we kept a really close eye on obviously what departments that we're doing, particularly obviously around health and borders reopening. And we've got eight states and territories around Australia, and then a federal national cabinet that sort of all each have intricate differences in the way that they'll reopen. And being a national sport, it makes it really challenging for us to keep a handle on who's open and what you can and can't do around different regions. But look, we've been quite fortunate, I guess, when you compare to most sports. The upcoming summer, particularly in New South Wales, is going to be our testing material. It's going to be really challenging for us in understanding, when community sport can come back, and, governments released, the New South Wales government's, released some restrictions or announced a roadmap out of restrictions commencing sort of what we expect around the middle of October, and where community sports it sits in that is still a little bit up in the air. And again, it goes to that we'll react once we have all of the information in front of us. But, looking forward to getting to, high vaccination rates, moving, our way through, the impact of COVID, and then a period where we sort of start to learn to live with COVID and what we can start to do. And then, those major strategies sort of get back on the table for us.
We mentioned vaccination rates there, Jamie. Now that is one interesting thing that's going to be obviously encompassing pretty much every part of society, and touch football is not going to be immune to that. Will players have to be vaccinated to compete? And if that's the case, what levels of competition will we be looking at for not so much mandatory vaccinations, but safely being able to compete with the tournaments you're running? And for that matter, given the ongoing concerns around COVID, do you have any pathways in mind for international tournaments, or is that once again a case of proactively reacting?
I think on both counts, when you talk, domestic and international touch, I think it'll be a case of wait and see. Government hasn't come out and given us any great direction on that. Not that we're expecting that to have been the case yet, but we'll be interested to watch this space around what happens certainly with community sport, right? When you start talking about community sport. But again, we'll follow government advice. So if government advice is that, restrictions are eased and we can go back to community sport, but it's only for those who are fully vaccinated, then we'll toe that line absolutely and make sure that our sport can get back to as near as full strength as we can in the short term. And if the model from government is, once we reach, 80% seems to be the number that everybody's talking about. Once we reach that 80% double dose vaccination across the community, if some of the broader restrictions start to reduce, and there's not the requirement for vaccinated and unvaccinated people to be able to play or not, then again we'll follow that. We'll follow that advice. So a really simple answer is, if government says, you need to do this and you need to comply, then we'll comply. If there's no requirement to comply, and we feel that in our interest and in the health and safety of our membership, that it is okay for us to return to sport with a mix of vaccinated and unvaccinated people participating, then of course that's the road that we would be looking to take.
And just on the international scene as well, obviously that's another thing that you can't have complete control over. You're very much reliant on what the government says. But are you looking forward, I suppose? Are you hopeful that you can actually get back to like a trans-Tasman series, for example? Yeah,
for sure. We're really confident with that. To be fair, we've had a couple of false starts. So we thought that January of 22, we would have been able to travel to Christchurch for the first series since 2019 or 2020 for both the youth and masters trans-Tasman in January 22. The uncertainty around where we're at the moment, and obviously the mass numbers that we're seeing in New South Wales and now Victoria sort of starting to creep up, that put significant doubt across that. I don't think that, I think January would have been too soon. We've moved that back to the middle of April. So we'll have back-to-back youth and masters trans-Tasmans in Christchurch. And then the following week, New Zealand will come here for our Opens trans-Tasman in Newcastle, which we're really excited about. And I think April, I'm really confident that by the time we get to April that, that trans-Tasman bubble's back open and we're ready to go.
Yeah, well, look, we'll keep our fingers crossed for April. Jamie, thanks so much for joining us. Just before I let you go, if we do want more information about NRL Touch Football, how can we find it?
Follow our socials. I think we do a really good. Our comms team do a really good job around our socials. So we're really active on Instagram and Facebook particularly. And then just go to our website, touchfootball.com.au, and you'll find all of the information about our sport that you could possibly want.
Brilliant. Well, Jamie, thanks so much for joining Game On.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks very much for having me on.